Welcome to the Possibility Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton, aka Possibilityman. We're committed to bringing you guests who strive to better people's lives and serve as a force for good in the world. Our guest today is Nikki Stone, Olympic gold medalist. Nikki, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Look, I'm looking forward to our conversation. But first, a reminder to our listeners and our viewers, follow, like, and share this podcast wherever you find it. Nikki, I got to ask you, what was it like for you to win an Olympic gold medal?
To share, I was in the sport of aerial skiing, which is the flipping and twisting, going 50 feet into the air and skiing down a ski slope. And I started out as a gymnast when I was very young. And at 5 years old, I thought, I want to win the Olympics someday. I even made my own podium out of tables and chairs and put them together and went out and told my parents I was going to win the Olympics. So to achieve that goal 22 years later was an enormous accomplishment. And I had to go through such heartache and such challenges in order to get to that medal. So it meant that much more. And it's something that I value to this day. You know, I still hear the American anthem play and I still feel all that incredible exuberance that I felt when I was standing on the podium.
Yeah. Now, goodness, you said you had this inspiration when you were 5 years old. Where do you think that came from?
You know, I think it's something that was innate. I think my parents did challenge me. They did push me. My sister wasn't an athlete, but she had academic success. So it was always instilled in us to try to be our best. That fight and, the eye of the tiger, I think it's something that you're born with. It's something that you have that need to go out there and have accomplishments, but it's only enhanced by the people that you're surrounded by.
Mm-hmm. Were your parents athletes?
No, they weren't. They're good. They're good athletes in that, but they never did professional sports. They never even were on a college team or anything like that. They just were athletic, and it really helped give me that athletic background to be able to go out and accomplish more.
Mm-hmm. How did you pick your first sport? You know, the first thing that you started to do as an athlete. How did that happen for you?
Well, I started as a gymnast, and when I was a very young girl, my neighbor taught me how to do back handsprings, where you flip over to your hands and then land on your feet. And we had a mattress in our basement, and she would teach me how to do it in the basement. And I fell in love with gymnastics. I always idolized Nadia Comaneci, and it was the sport I pursued for the first, 15 years or so of my life.
Mm-hmm. So, you competed in high school, or did you start competing earlier than high school?
Much earlier than high school. I started competing when I was about 5 years old and went through high school for a couple of years in high school. And then I turned to aerial skiing when I was 18 years old.
How did you recognize, or when did you recognize that you were good at this, at your sport, either gymnastics or aerial skiing?
Well, gymnastics, much to my parents' dismay, I would put all my ribbons up on the wall with a staple gun. And so my whole wall was covered with ribbons. And I knew that I had potential to do well. I had had success at many different levels. But in gymnastics, I wasn't that elite gymnast that goes on to the Olympics. And it just so happened that I fell in love with the sport of aerials because people were jumping on TV into a pond. And I thought, that looks so fun. I want to try this. I had no aspirations of going to the Olympics, but I just wanted to try the sport. And the first time I did it, I was hooked. It was so exhilarating. And to have that excitement, to have the fears, because believe it or not, I'm afraid of heights. So to be able to go up there and conquer some of those fears, to be able to go out there and have success really helped me. And right away, I learned how good I could be, because the third day ever, I was able to do a double backflip. And once I did that, the rest of the athletes accepted me into their family, and I was off and running from there.
Wow. Now, many of us have heard the word aerial skiing, but I want you to kind of describe what that is for us. And I think you also did inverted aerial skiing. What are those things?
Right. So aerial skiing can be anything that you go off a jump onto a snow hill. And inverted aerials is when you flip. So you're actually going upside down and learning flips and making yourself inverted. So it was something like I said, I started when I was 18 years old, and I did pursue this for the next, 15 or so years. And I really did love the sport. We go 65 kilometers per hour into a 10 to 12-foot tall wall, flipping over up to 50 feet in the air, which is a 5-story building, and then landing on a 45-degree steep hill and hopefully skiing away.
Wow. Now, did I hear you say that you were, I'll use the word afraid of heights? So
Yes.
how did you go from being afraid of heights to doing aerial skiing and also inverted aerials?
Yeah. So if I were to stand on the edge of a 5-story building, I could not look over. It'd be terrifying to me. But for me, one, we flip so quickly that you're not staring at the ground. But I still was scared, so much so that I would go and get sick to my stomach in the woods each time I had to do a triple backflip, flipping over 3 times in the air. And what helped me is that goal of winning the Olympic Games. I wanted that medal so badly that I was going to push through anything in order to achieve that medal. And it really helped give me confidence, knowing that I had the tools in place. I knew the areas that I was strong, and it helped me to be able to take the risk to do those harder jumps.
How did you identify those areas that you were strong? And my second question, I'll just let you know now, is how did you learn to improve in those areas where you were weak? So first, then second.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I learned a skill from actually Dan Jansen, who is an Olympic speed skater. And what he would do is he would take a chart and he'd put down the different things that worked well for him or didn't. So you would have your level of confidence that day, number of hours you slept, what you would eat that day, your energy level. And you'd go through, and each time you had a very successful or unsuccessful day, you would mark down what things were working for you or not working for you. So a lot of people would think that I'd want a level of 10 of my motivation excitement the day of the Olympics. And I actually wanted to be tired. I did best when I was tired and my legs felt weak. And so I knew that I'd have to push myself the days before in order to have that proper right area that I would go on to achieve that medal.
Wow. Look, many of us, you are among a rare breed, obviously, as an Olympic gold medalist, but let's look at preparing for the Olympics. First of all, physical training. What was that like for you? Just getting ready.
Well, yeah, it's a full-time job. We're waking up at 6 a.m. We're going through video review. We're going running. We're lifting weights. We're going off our jumps. We're going trampoline work, and we're going right until 6 or 7 at night. And a lot of that time is spent, doing physical activity. There's also mental components that we can help improve, but there's so much that you're going out there and just pushing yourself and pushing your limits. And so it was a lot of training and not a lot of off time in order to achieve the medal.
So you mentioned mental components. What were some of them? How did you create that mindset, that you could become a champion?
Right. So I got an undergraduate degree in psychology, and I have a master's in sports psychology. And it really helped me understand my own mind and how I would work as an athlete. And so it helped me to be able to build my confidence, particularly helped me to overcome adversities, since I had a number of adversities going into the Olympic Games. And it was something that I could help improve upon what I had done before and learned the different things that it would take in order to achieve the medal.
I want to come back to some of those adversities in a moment because that's an important topic. But I want to continue looking at preparing to become an Olympic, competitor. What kinds of things? What about your nutrition? Tell us about that. What did you eat?
We had a nutritionist, and they would help work with us and trying to make sure that we had, square meals each day, hitting all the food groups. But I will also share that Olympic athletes are not perfect.
Mm.
I'm someone who loves sweets, and what I would do is to try to plan ahead for some of those sweets by preparing small amounts so that I could still get that sugar fix I needed, but also hitting a number of those food groups. And, like I said, people think Olympic athletes have to eat perfectly. And for some sports, they do. But for me, I still was able to enjoy what I liked. I was a vegetarian, but it could still make sure that I expanded enough to be able to have that bowl of pasta when I went to Italy.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, many of us, you mentioned adversity a moment ago, and everyone on the planet, all 8 billion of us, we all face adversity. So what have you learned about adversity, but also learned about resilience as an athlete, especially an Olympic athlete?
Yeah. So I had a spinal injury, and it was just 2 years before the Olympic Games. And I had 10 doctors tell me that I would never ski again. And I had injured two of the discs in my lumbar back.
Mm.
And they said it's like, imagine taking an egg and shaking up that egg, and the inside of it becomes scrambled. It has cracks and it's leaking fluids. And these discs don't repair themselves. And so that's why the doctors told me that I would be done with the sport. And it was depressing. And I did go through a period where I started doubting that I'd be able to come back. But I was able to find a quote, a poem that was given to me when I was a 10-year-old girl that was called You Mustn't Quit. And on top of that poem, I found a picture of a man named Joe Frazier. And Joe
Mm.
Frazier won a gold medal in the Olympics in boxing. But a lot of people don't know that he did it with a broken fist, broken hand. And so I figured he needs his fist to come back to box as much as I need my back to come back to jumping. So if he could come back, why couldn't I? And so I started looking for doctors again. I found a doctor in Boston, Massachusetts, who told me that I could come back, but I had to build up the muscles in my back to support those injured discs so that I could train hard enough so I could come back to the sport. And I really learned that when you set your mind to something, you can overcome anything, you can come back, but it's not going to be easy. A lot of people ask me, who's the doctor you saw, or what's the surgery you had? And they want that simple fix. And there is no simple fix. The
Mm.
fix was hard work.
Yeah. What kept you going? Because you mentioned, it was depressing from time to time. What kept you going during the training and trying to bounce back?
The thing that kept me going was always that thought of the little girl who built her own Olympic podium,
Hmm.
and the need and desire to go out there and win the Olympics someday. I would visualize what it was like to stand on the podium. And I would imagine everything surrounding that, the smells, the textures, the feel, everything that I would encounter. I tried to imagine that, and it helped push me. So when I was in the gym and going through those hard times, it really helped push me. And there was one visual reminder I had. There's a quote by General George S. Patton that says, "Success is how high you bounce after you hit rock bottom." And I would take a super ball and I would bounce this super ball as that visual reminder that I could bounce back, but I had to stay strong. And so when I was in excruciating pain in the gym, I'd bounce my super ball and knew that I had to be strong so that I could come back.
Wow. Look, you must have had supportive parents, early on. And I'm just curious, were you exposed to things like, high level competitions as a child that might have opened up your horizons to possibilities?
Yeah, my parents always let me know that anything was possible. They let me know that I could accomplish whatever I set my mind to, but that I was going to have to work hard. It's nothing that actually comes easily to you, but they let me know that this is something you can accomplish. They never laughed at me, never told me it wasn't possible when I said I wanted to win the Olympics at 5 years old. But they did teach me a philosophy that was called the turtle effect. And they said, in order to be successful, you have to be like a turtle. You have to be soft on the inside. You have to have a hard shell, and you have to be willing to stick your neck out. And it's
Uh-huh.
something that I use throughout my entire career. And I actually speak on now for corporate groups. is having that turtle effect, finding that soft inside, the things you love, having the ability to overcome adversities, anything that's standing in your way, and then sticking your neck out to take the risks and having the confidence to go and pursue more.
I love it. You just explained to me the title of your book, and I'm going to return to your book before we end our conversation. But did you witness any Olympics prior to participating in the Olympics when you won it?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, did you go to any Olympic events before you actually competed?
Yeah, when I was 10 years old, I went to watch my first Olympic Games in person. And it was 10 to 13, somewhere in that range. And I remember meeting some of the Olympic athletes, and I thought, these are real people. These aren't idols. This is not a superhero. It's not, Batman or Superman. These are real people that are going out there and training. And it gave me that drive to be able to go and accomplish it myself, knowing that, this is something you just work hard for. It's not that you have to have an incredible ability beyond, being superhuman.
Uh-huh. Well, I tell you, I saw a picture of you upside down, and I thought you were a superhero. So,
That's
yeah. So look, so I'm not sure athletics has taught you a lot of things, and I want to play a little game with you. Are you up for it? Just real simple.
I'm up for it.
Okay. So the question is, what has athletics taught you about, and I'm going to throw out a few things and I want you to just respond to me. So what has competitive athletics, especially at the Olympic level, taught you about goal setting?
It's taught me that you have to have goals. It's something that at a very young age, I realized that if you put your goals down, especially if you put them in writing, it really helps keep you on track. And my first year on tour, our coach had us write down our goals, and we got into a contest that the weather was terrible. And I was scared of going out there and competing, but I remembered what I'd written on that piece of paper, and it kept me going out there and competing that day. It helped me push past those fears, push past the adversities by making myself accountable to be able to reach those goals.
And we've already touched upon adversity, but I want to put this in as number two. What has being a competitive athlete, taught you about overcoming adversity?
It's taught me that any adversity, is something that you can overcome. I tried to see, instead of it being a wall, I try to imagine that it's a hurdle. And so you can jump over this, but it's going to take hard work. It's nothing that's going to be easy. And I actually learned that there's great lessons in these adversities, and you learn what not to do the next time. So, with my back, I learned that I had to make sure that I was strong and keep my back strong to be able to go out there and compete. And if I was in wind and there was some certain factor that didn't work for me, I would have to make sure that I adjusted that the next time. So I ended up learning to welcome some of those adversities so that I could come back and be stronger. And actually at the Olympic Games, I was praying for bad weather. And I was probably the only one out there that was, because I knew that I could accomplish something. I knew that I could overcome the weather when a lot of people couldn't. And when there's no wind, great conditions, everyone jumps well. But it's very few that can overcome those adversities. So I actually, making sure that I welcomed those helped me at those Olympic Games.
I find that so interesting. You saw inclement weather as giving you a competitive advantage. Whoa. Have you ever felt as a competitor, have you ever felt like giving up?
Of course, again, I'm human. And when I was going through my spinal injury, there were days I wanted to give up. I probably spent 9 months crying every day and questioning if I was able to come back and actually start jumping again. And so I really had to make sure that I kept that goal in mind. And like I said, that poem that I was given when I was a little girl, and that picture of Joe Frazier, I kept it in my pocket, and it was all wrinkled in my pocket, but I could pull it out and remind myself that people do overcome things. And if you give up now, you're not going to find what those abilities are.
There's gold in those hills, but you got to find them, huh, Nikki?
Exactly.
Yeah. We've already touched upon nutrition, but for number three, I want to ask again, What has being a competitive athlete, I mean, for a long time, taught you about eating a balanced meal? The importance of
It's
eating a
taught
balanced meal.
Yeah, so eating a balanced meal has really taught me how to make sure that I'm strong when I'm going out there and competing, that
Mhm.
I am able to have the right mindset. It really helps to make sure that you're at your athletic best, and it's something that's going to help me live longer.
Mhm. And that's great. My last one, and we're playing this game of what athletics taught you about building strong, let's call them a positive belief system. What have you learned about that?
It's so important to have positivity in our lives. And when I took a sports psychology class, they did a lesson with us where we would hold your arms out to the side and someone would try to push them down. And if you had a negative thought in your mind, your arms would drop immediately. You know, you wouldn't be able to hold your arms up. And I thought of my mom going through cancer, and it really defeated me. I was really upset about it. And I realized that there was no strength there, mentally or physically. And they said to think of something positive the next time you put your arms out. And so I put my arms out, and someone was going to push them down. And I thought about how it's going to make our family stronger, how it's going to help my mom to be able to appreciate life, and that we are all going to come back from this and really have a great outcome in how we treat our bodies. And in that moment, I was so strong. And it taught me that we really do have to have that strength. We have to make sure that we're thinking positively because it's going to make an enormous difference.
That reminds me of the field of neuroscience. Did you all call it neuroscience back then, or when you were studying performance psychology and the like?
No, it was just, something talking about positivity
Uh-huh.
within sports psychology.
Uh-huh. That's fantastic. After you won the Olympics, how did being a gold medalist change your life?
It changed my life in a number of ways. And when I was competing, I had to make sure that I pushed that in the back of my thoughts. Because if you're focusing too hard on all the life changing aspects, you actually really put an enormous target on your back, and you put a target in your own mind that you push yourself, and you start thinking of all the distractions and all the things that could go wrong, and you have to focus on what you're doing for your jumps. And it really helped open a number of doors once I actually did get to that point. I've met so many people. I've been able to become a motivational speaker, and it's really helped give me confidence that I can now instill in my children.
Yeah, I think you went on some television shows after winning the medal as well, right? What were some of them, and which one? Well, I don't want you to single any of them out, but what was special about doing that tour and speaking on national television after
Yeah,
winning
so
the
I
gold? Yeah.
remember I remember doing interviews every day, all day long. We'd go from one to another, and I got to be on the Today Show. I got to go on Late Night with David Letterman. Just about every late night show and morning show, we would make the rounds, and I was incredibly nervous, especially for David Letterman, because I thought, I do a crazy sport, but he ended up keeping me on there double the time they had planned for. And it was so incredible to be able to go and meet some of these people, to have that accomplishment of going out there and to be able to share it with the world. Really was pretty rewarding.
Mhm. Wow, yeah, David Letterman, that's big time. What is it? I mean, how do the people that you work with prepare you for all of the microphones that will be placed in front of you, especially after winning the gold medal?
Well, we did media training with the US ski team, and I actually tried to avoid it for a long time because I was so nervous. And I'm not someone who naturally could go and speak and have that ability. But now I'm a motivational speaker. And so I really had to make sure that I worked at it. And it was just pushing myself to take that first leap of faith, just like when I took my first aerial jump. I had to make sure that I was preparing. And that first interview I did was not stellar. It was
Uh-huh.
not the best that I could ever do, but I learned a lot of lessons in that. And now as a speaker, I actually watch videotapes back from my speeches so I can find areas that I can improve. And it's just like my sport, it's finding those levels so I can go out there and have success as a speaker, just as I did as an athlete.
Uh-huh. Well, that sounds like you know how to make improvement. Now, you are a parent, and I'm just curious, do you work with children in terms of helping children recognize their ability to achieve more?
Well, I work with my children.
Okay, all right.
I have done some sports psychology work and worked with a number of athletes. My son's school, I went and helped them, with some team building things and some personal growth exercises. But for my children, they probably don't love it, but it's a daily habit that I instill. A lot of these skills I learned with them, and they both are accomplished athletes themselves. And luckily in their own fields, not as an aerial skier, because I don't know if I could handle watching them do aerial skiing. But it's something that I really think is important to learn young. It's something that makes an Olympic athlete, makes a top athlete, it makes a top businessman and woman, to learn some of the things you do as a young athlete.
Mhm. What kind of sports have your children gravitated to?
So my daughter was a dancer and she was a gymnast, like I was, and I actually coached her in gymnastics for a while. And she hated the fact that I would never give her an out. She'd say, "Can I rest for a bit?" Or, "This doesn't feel right. Can I have a break?" And I'd say, "No, you're fine." And it was always that saying, "You're okay. All you need to do is push yourself." And it was something that I just didn't want her to give up. I never wanted her to give up. If she didn't do her best, that was okay. I don't need her to be an accomplished athlete. I don't need her to be an Olympic athlete. I just need to make sure that she's pushing herself. And now she does cheer and soccer. So she's run the gamut. And my son's done a number of sports as well. He did breakdancing when he was really little. He's done t-ball. He's done wrestling. And now his favorite sports are soccer and football. So he has his own path as well. And I'm glad that neither of them necessarily followed in mom's footsteps.
That's fantastic. Yeah. An athletic family for sure. Now I want to talk about Nikki today. I want to throw out some things, that you're doing and have you just share with us. I know that you do something called motivational minutes. What is that? And what do you try to do in those minutes that you share on social media?
So I always found that when I would have a quote in the morning, if there was a quote I read, it would put me in that right mindset for the day. And it would help start the day on the right foot. And so I wanted to be able to share these motivational minutes, which is they're all around a minute, to give that inspiration to put you on that right path. Most of them are around motivation and mindset, but there are a few that are on diet and exercise, and a few helping physically to be able to help someone excel. But it was just helping that little bit. This society today has a very hard time watching anything very long. And so if I could just get their attention for 1 minute, it would be able to help them. So if anyone wants to check it out on YouTube, it's at Olympic Gold. You can go check it out, and tons of motivation. I brought in a number of different athletes as well that share motivation. And these were all my role models, all these athletes I've brought in, and you'll be amazed to see some of the athletes that got involved.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, we'll put the link in the show notes so people can go to that site. I was going to ask you where you draw from, and you mentioned some athletes. Where else, though, do you draw from as you share those motivational minutes? Where is it coming from for you?
A lot of it's drawn from my children.
Oh,
It's either lessons I want to teach them or lessons that they've taught me. My son is a type 1 diabetic, and I'm amazed that someone told me once that he's going to come up to you someday and say, "Why me?" And so I always prepared for this. And he's now had diabetes for 6, 7 years. And he has never once come up to me and say, "Why me?" And it's because he takes what he has. He realizes that there are so many things in our life that we are given blessings for. And we have to make sure we look at those things and appreciate what we have and realize that everyone has some adversity in their life. For my daughter, I've learned about performance. I've learned how to be a good person. She's got an incredible heart, and she has that soft inside of the turtle. and she has resilience. She always is able to bounce back. And so I've learned a lot of things from her, and it's helped keep me on that right path so that I can share that with others.
Sound like you have amazing children. How's your son doing, by the way?
He's doing well.
Mm.
It's something we deal with on a daily basis. I haven't slept in 7 years, but he really is incredibly strong. He's incredibly capable, and it's something that I know he's gonna kill this, just like everything else he tries to set his mind to.
He sounds like an amazing young man. That's great. Now, what do you do as a sports consultant?
So I've worked with people going skiing, hosting skiing tours, and then also I've done some sports psychology. But most of my focus now is going in with corporations, doing motivational speeches for them, team building exercises. I have worked with some teams doing team building so that I can go and help them as a team be able to go out there and accomplish more. But the majority of my focus is on motivational speaking, and also making sure that I can go and use things for my book. I was a best-selling author for the book When Turtles Fly: Secrets of Successful People Who Know How to Stick Their Necks Out. And so a lot of these skills that I've learned really helped me set me up for these stages of my life.
hmm Well, tell us a little bit more about When Turtles Fly. I love the title, and I didn't know the story behind it until you shared it a little earlier, but that's a wonderful title. Tell us a little bit more about that book.
So it's stories from all different contributors from all different fields, about 40 contributors, and they all share stories of how they use the turtle effect, having the soft inside, the hard shell, or sticking their neck out, and use pieces of this in order to find their own success. And I have people like Nobel Prize winners, Fortune 500 CEOs. I have people like Tommy Hilfiger, Prince Albert of Monaco, Lester Holt, Tommy Hilfiger. Um, it runs the gamut of number of people that actually helped with the book. And it's interesting to see that no matter what field you're in, no matter what we pursue, we all have a similar path and things that we have to overcome, things that we have to make sure we're finding that passion, and things that we're making sure that we're taking the right risks.
Was this your first big writing project?
I've written for other books a number of times. This is the first book I wrote, and it wasn't easy. I had my story woven into all these stories, and piece of advice throughout it. And it's hard making yourself vulnerable, putting yourself out there, your life out there. But it taught me so many lessons, and it really helped to make sure that I was helping others achieve their success by exposing all my weaknesses, exposing things that didn't work for me, and also learning lessons from what I did go through.
And the book did very well. Were you surprised that that book did so well?
Well, with the people that were included, no. You have people like Shaun White, Lindsey Vonn, Tommy Hilfiger, all these people that really contributed to the book. I knew that it would draw in a lot of interest. But as far as the success of the book in how people received the writing was off the charts. And I was so moved writing something that's always been meaningful to me, but I certainly didn't have that background of a number of books or a number of writings. So it really was rewarding to see how well it was received.
hmm What's next for Nikki Stone?
Well, there's a number of things. There's actually a program that I'm working with now that's helping build scholarships for students in need, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're going to some adversity from universities and helping them to build these scholarships. And we go around to corporations, we help them save money. And through the money they save, they will donate it to the cause. And I'll also give you a link to that you can include on your site. But it's IPG Social Impact is the name of the company, and it's really profound. It's great to have something that has meaning behind it. I'm still doing motivational speaking, and I'm still being a mom.
Uh-huh. That's wonderful. Yeah. So, Nikki, I really enjoyed our conversation. Now, is there anything else you care to share with us that we haven't touched upon already?
I think you covered the gamut, but it's just exciting to be able to join your listeners and to be able to share a piece of myself. Remember that everything is possible. Everything is possible, no matter who you are. You just got to believe.
I love the word you use. It's possible. So thank you so much for being with us today, Nikki. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Possibility Action Network podcast. Our guest today has been Nikki Stone, an Olympic gold medalist. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton. Until next time, good day